Hello.
Hi
John.
there, welcome to the third now videos about tackling the problem of alcohol.
Mini-series.
Yes, I'm Lou. Please listen to
John.
the other two because it'll make more sense. You may just have come in assessing the problem, but they do intertwine with each other. So assessing the problem, we're now talking about a tool rather than an emotional reaction.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. It's very important, we're not talking about it here, but if you do the program, and again, talking about exhaustion, it is an exhausting journey, and therefore to cut out the things that you may feel you want to do but are not particularly productive is really, really important, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, apart from the fact that it is exhausting, just doing something that isn't very effective, keeping doing them can actually exacerbate the situation. It can exacerbate your anxiety, it can exacerbate your depression, it can exacerbate your feeling of helplessness, powerlessness, but it can also, lead to sort of much more friction, and the much more friction can lead to much more drinking, etc. So not only does it not help the situation, it can actually make the situation worse.
Can I just say, the one that's hardest to go away from is the pleading with your partner. Now, I was in a binge situation, so there were times when my husband felt crap about what he'd done, and he was very, very open to change, and very seemingly open to the please don't do this again, this is ruining our life and our children. And it was very real, the response. It wasn't a lie at that time.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, I was a binge drinker as well, and I was in a 2-month cycle, that was mine. When I drank, and I drank heavily and for days at a time, and weeks, even, and on one notable occasion, 2 months. But the 2-month cycle, I would come off drinking, I would feel absolutely awful. Really bad physically, really bad mentally, because I suffered a lot from panic attacks and things like that, and then eventually I would start to feel okay, and then I would start to think, whoa, I should have done this ages ago, and then it was, hey, look at me, how good I am, and then it was, hey, it's okay now, and then I would think, oh, one drink wouldn't hurt. And then off I went again, So, but when I was coming off and I said, never again, I honest hen, I'm never going to drink again, I honestly meant it. I mean, it wasn't a lie. I wasn't trying to, convince anybody. I wasn't trying to, maybe I was trying to convince my wife, but I wasn't trying to pull the wool over her eyes. I wasn't trying to, pretend I wasn't lying to her. I might have been lying to myself. But at that moment in time, I genuinely meant I will never drink again, But that thought just kind of disappeared, And just think about it for a minute or two, that how many times you have made a New Year resolution, I'm going to go on a diet, I'm going to do exercise, I'm going to join the gym, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do the next thing, and you really meant it at the time. And then you find yourself, in the middle of February, you haven't been to the gym, or the diet's gone out the window, and the chocolates come back in. It's a very similar thing happens here.
Sure.
Very similar.
Now, these two things are going to look the same in some way, because we're going to talk about share, which is assessing the drink. But the difference is, in the pleading, is you're wrecking our life, and you are making life terribly difficult for me, which really hits the guilt button, particularly if they love you. And I don't think you'd be here listening to this video if you didn't feel your partner loved you.
Yeah.
And it hits that button square on. Now, assessment share is slightly different, because it's kind of slinging an arm on their shoulder and say, I want you to look at this circumstance, what's happening around us, because the circumstance isn't working, and I feel that this circumstance needs to change. And it's kind of the same thing, but it's done in a different way, isn't it? Can you just explain a bit about that?
Yeah, it's really quite different, because you drink too much. Oh, no, I don't. Oh, yes, I do. And this pantomime starts, what's too much, because there's always somebody who drinks more than me, drinks more often than me, therefore, I drink a lot, but, Bill, George, Annie, Cecilia, look at them, they drink so much. But that's not the issue, because they don't live at this house, so that's the difference. So once you start talking about the actual, the quantity or the frequency of drinking, then, it gets very messy. It gets very messy because, as I say, there's always somebody drinks more, etc.
So you move it from...
So rather than talk about the actual drinking, you talk about the consequences of the drinking.
Okay.
What are the outcomes?
I was going to say that, but you said it for me. So we move from looking at the behaviour to the consequences of what's happening in the house.
Exactly.
Okay. Can you go through them?
I could.
Okay.
In fact, I will.
Okay.
Okay, it's we call it SHARE, and it's an acronym, so it's safety. Safety is about, safety, but I don't just mean that, your drinker might be violent, because that might be one aspect of the safety. It might be abusive, might be verbally or even physically abusive. But there are other aspects of it. Do they smoke in bed while they're drinking? I did. Do they sort of decide that they're making, a big fry up in the middle of the night when they're drunk? Things like that. Do they, leave appliances on? Do they, there can be all sorts of. Do they drive when they're drunk? So safety covers quite a lot of territory.
And also it could be safety of armchairs. It can be safety of kind of carpets. It doesn't always have to just be circumstances. Actually, because I didn't want to bring people into my home, I was ashamed of sort of the various things that have happened in my home and the staying, all of this kind of stuff. So it can be things as well as circumstances. Okay, so what's H?
H is health. It's and we're not talking about the drinker's health here, although we could be if we wanted, but we're talking about your health. As we talked in the last video, anxiety and depression are actually quite, they are raised with people who live in an alcoholic household. So your own health can be suffering. You can be suffering because, as I say, you're carrying an awful lot of anxiety. When is he going to come back? If I bring people home, is she going to be drinking? Do you know what I mean? So there is a lot of anxiety, and my own wife, she had a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and she lost a huge amount of weight. While I was drinking. So it can affect the partner's health as well.
Okay. A lot of issues around there. What about A?
A is about ambition. Is this the way you really sort of thought your life was going to turn out? Is this sort of held you back? So very often it can. People in alcoholic households tended to be a bit more deprived. Why? Because a lot of the money that's coming in is going out in alcohol. In fact, it may be that jobs are lost, and therefore there's even more deprivation. The sacrifices that are made in terms of good food ends up in in
the bin.
Well. I was actually thinking in terms of, rather than buy good food, you actually buy, bad beer, So that's where the money goes. That's the priority all the time, And again, in my household, that's exactly what it was.
And you find you end up compromising. You don't go for the high-powered job because you can't be absolutely sure that your partner's going to take care of the kids, or you can't open the B&B that you're always going to do because you can't bring people in because he or she might be drunk. So gradually your ambitions have become less.
Start to shrink, and I mean you might be living places that you didn't want to live, etc. But we'll come on to that one in a minute. And then, R is relationships. And so there's the obvious relationship. There's a relationship between the partner and the drinker. There's a relationship between maybe the children and the drinker. The parents of the drinker. So relationships can really suffer there, particularly when lies are involved and deceit's involved, and particularly if there's any other of these things involved, like abuse or violence, etc. But it's not just those relationships. It may be the relationships that you had with your friends. You know, you might have been in a big group of friends who partied regularly, who went round each other's houses, and that might just not be happening anymore. That nobody wants to invite you round, or you don't want to accept the invitations, and you certainly don't want people coming round to your house. You know, so the relationship, again, it's quite a broad issue, and you know, and we'll go to the last one, and then I'll say something.
And then E is economic, isn't it?
No, E is your environment. It's where you are living, you know, and it's not just, it's about your living conditions. You know, are you living in a place that, you know, very often drinkers, and you know, a lot of them come from deprived areas. But you know, a psychiatrist I worked with many years ago, he said that not everybody started there. You know, very often because of you know, the losing jobs, you know, for spending all the money on alcohol, very often that's where they end up because they can't pay bills, etc. You know, so you might be ending up in a place that you rather really wouldn't like to live in. On the other hand, you know, when you look at your house, I mean, when I was drinking, particularly in my last binge after my wife had left, it looked as if the bin men made deliveries. I mean, the place was just a tip. You know, it was an absolute tip because I didn't clean up. I didn't do anything. You know, so. That's the other aspect of it.
Right. So there's environment, and of course there is economic issues around there.
Yeah,
so
you
can use that E for economic.
You can. You know,
in the book it's environment, isn't it? So you score them. Then you
you score them. This. Yeah, and remember, one of the reasons we did this, and all we did was put in some hints, was because these are your issues, you know, they're not our issues. We could go and sort of, oh, this is a problem, that's a problem. But if it's not a problem for you, then it doesn't really matter. It doesn't motivate, you know, and that's what you have to remember. These are individual issues.
So if you use the tool and then kind of decide maybe
what you do is then
not all of them.
No, not all of them. What you do is you sit there, then you know, you maybe have this list under all the different headings, and then you score them. You know what's important. You know, on a 1 to 10, you know, you could have burn marks in the carpets or things like that. Or Lou and I are introverts. So having lots of people around the house doesn't really matter a great deal to us. So, you know, it wouldn't be a 10 for us. That would be maybe a 3, you know. Not really that bothered about it, you know. However, our own relationship, that's different. If our relationship was really suffering, then that might be 8, 9, or even a 10. You know, so that's what's important. And what's also important is to just pick out the ones that are really important and not to fight every battle all at the same time. You know? So you don't go in with this, I've got this huge list, you know, and I would get these other 43 issues that I would like to take into consideration. You're not going to get a hearing.
No, you aren't. You're absolutely not. And we can't go into this because we're trying to keep this short at great length, but please read the environment that you set up.
Yeah.
All right? Your instinct will be, quickly do share. Right, I've got 11 out of 10 for all of these. We'll just do 2 of them this week, 2 of them next week, to use it as a tool to get your needs met. And that's really, really understandable, but it's not helpful. A lot of what we say, you know, is understandable, but it isn't helpful. And to get rid of the exhaustion, what we don't want to set up is 14 goes at share.
Yeah.
None of which work properly because they all go off at half cock. Plan this.
Yeah.
Use the time when you know they're most open. Yeah. Do it even with parents. I mean, you go out for a meal and you know that he's or she is there and the parents are close. You know, you can even do it as a family intervention. Again, make sure that this doesn't feel like an ambush.
Yeah. But, I mean, it kind of works 2 ways. Yes, it does give you ammunition to sort of talk to the drinker about their drinking, so that you're not talking about how much they're drinking all the time, you're talking about the consequences of it. The second thing is, if there's really going to be no shift in them changing, you know, stopping drinking, then what you can actually do is you can lessen the consequences by saying, okay, if you've got to drink, then can we just change this?
Yeah.
Can we alter this? And slowly but surely you take some ground back. It's not a magic wand, but sometimes it can help. So for some people, yes, it will make them look at the drinking, make them think about changing their drinking altogether, you know, like stopping. For others, what it might do is it might sort of reduce the consequences for you, you know, and that's a good...
I think this is really, really important, because for a drinking, giving up drink is like you suddenly saying, I want you to get up Everest, and I want you to do it every day.
Yeah.
But actually, if you tackle a little bit of the problem and you just say, I want you to never drink before 7 o'clock, I think your drinker at that point, you've given them something that doesn't feel like slaying a dragon, but they might think, yeah, I could do that. And so what you're doing is you're bringing a little bit of control, and you're helping them a bit of control. And sometimes giving up drinking is a series of small steps that you overcome. So don't underestimate tackling a little bit of a problem.
No, there's a whole sort of a series of research which talks about harm reduction. And that's what this is. This is harm reduction. It's reducing the consequences of drinking.
And both of you at that point will feel you've gained a bit of power, gained a bit of respect, and gained a bit
Gives you
of
negotiation.
love. Yeah.
Rather than, you know, this black and white. You drink too much. Oh, no, I don't. Oh, yes, I do. You know, and off it goes.
And in the journey out of the relationship, if you can do this well, if you don't rush in at half cock. Now, if you have, you know, be kind to yourself, because this situation would kind of test the patience of a saint. But we're always trying to help you to do this the best way possible. But even if you're going out the door, to know that you've done this, to be able to say, look, we sat down, we took time, we've really tried, but, you know, this isn't happening. It will, again, empower you as you go out the door to be able to say, I really did try. I really did try. And that's really important. Maybe for you, maybe at that point you couldn't give a damn anyway, but your kids, you know, and the people around you can truly say, I really did try. So it's a win-win.
Yeah.
If there is ever such a thing in this situation.
It brings more clarity to what is a messy situation anyway.
Yeah. Now, we said we keep this short, so we're going to stop. You know, listen to them, feedback, talk about them in the forum. You know, let us know how we can help you. We are here to help you and support you. And if you can figure out how you'd like us to help you do that, we will always come and turn up and talk about these things with you. So thank you for listening. We're here. We care for you. We're by your side as much as we know how. Look at the programme, try and put it into practice, support each other, and let's do this journey one step at a time.
Indeed.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.